Good afternoon. Does that work? Everybody hear me? All right, great. Okay, good. Well, thanks, John, and thanks to the steering committee for inviting me to speak here today. By the way, it's great to be back at the S&T conference again. Also, thanks to Tom Killian and to General Rubenstein. Really, your charge to empower the soldier really brings us together to accomplish some great things. And by looking at some of the titles of the papers that are presented, you all are doing just that. I am not going to try to hang in there with some of the topics we've seen, if you will, up on the screen. I am going to talk about S&T, and I'm going to talk about product development, but I'm going to go back in history a little bit and talk about some things that have happened and then try to compare and contrast that to where we are today. See, as I was preparing my thoughts for this year's conference, I realized that I really represent industry among a group of distinguished military leaders and academics. And because of that, of course, I'm honored to speak today about the mutually supporting relationship among industry, the S&T community, and the end user in our quest to deliver the best of science and technology to the soldier. As industry's representative, I will try to keep my comments broad in order to address how we work together with the S&T community to provide warfighters with advantage on the battlefield. The future conflicts in which the Army will find itself will require an evolving set of new capabilities. Requirements created by irregular warfare will drive the need to have information reach out to the tactical edge. Accordingly, we must ask the question, is our acquisition process from S&T to design and development to production and eventually to support properly aligned to deliver this capability? Let's see, it's a fitting coincidence that I'm speaking to you today on December 3rd, an important but perhaps obscure date in American history. Now, you're probably thinking that I'm off by a few days, but I'm really not talking about Pearl Harbor. I do indeed mean December 3rd. Why? Because December 3rd is the birthday of General George Brinton McClellan, developer of the advantageous military technology in his day, namely the McClellan saddle. Some of you in the audience probably know more about this than I do, but for others, perhaps a short history. McClellan developed his saddle after an extensive European tour. 6 years before the Civil War began, then Captain McClellan was part of a military commission tasked with studying European armies, their tactics and equipment. His saddle design was based on what he saw on that tour. In fact, the McClellan saddle was just one design reviewed in one of military's earliest wide-scale user tests of potential new equipment. Each design under consideration was tested by 2 or 3 cavalry squadrons, some 250 to 300 troops, and McClellan's model was eventually chosen. It was standard issue, in fact, for almost 100 years. From 1859 until the Army retired its mounted cavalry units in World War II. In fact, it's still used today in some ceremonial Army activities. When McClellan's saddle was put into production, it sat, literally, at the tactical edge, on the very horses that carried cavalrymen into battle. It was simpler, less expensive than saddles of its day. At the same time, it was light enough not to weigh down the horse, yet sturdy enough to provide good support to the rider and his gear. The net benefits were lower cost, longevity for horses, and increased mobility and endurance on the battlefield for warfighters. McClellan's saddle blended the 3 key elements of successful innovation: research, industrial production, and the requirements of the end user. And it did not take 10 years to become widely fielded. History is replete with examples of how effective and innovative technology can be a game changer for soldiers on the battlefield. Introduction of the self-contained metallic cartridge in the 1850s and the Spencer breech-loading repeating rifle during the Civil War proved a decisive advantage to Union troops battling Confederate soldiers. Colonel John Weiler's Lightning Brigades of mounted infantry were among the first to put this disruptive technology to test in the summer of 1863. At that time, the Spencer rifle was slow to be adopted by the Ordnance Bureau. After taking a vote, Weidler and his troops agreed to purchase the innovative breech loaders for themselves. Their investment proved a wise one. Armed with rapid-fire Spencers, Weidler's brigade spearheaded one of the most successful campaigns of the war in the West, overpowering a much larger Confederate force at Hoover's Gap in Tennessee. Of course, at that time, Tennessee was in the West, forcing a general retreat and threatening the vital Confederate rail junction at Chattanooga. The Spencer rifle and the lighter, shorter carbine version eventually became widely used by Union cavalry units, thereby creating a formidable combination of rapid firepower and mobility, a true force multiplier. And yes, those cavalrymen rode into battle on a McClellan saddle. Lever-action, breech-loading rifles like the Spencer were a product of a robust supply chain and industrial base that could develop these innovative weapons and ramp up relatively quickly in order to produce them in quantity. The more agrarian-based Southern economy could not match the North's industrial production advantage, nor did they have the access to raw materials, in this instance copper, to produce the cartridges. Now, there are many other examples of the power of innovation and disruptive technologies. The machine gun, the tank, and the radar, just to name the few. And in fact, the first primitive computers developed by the British scientists to aid in code breaking and deciphering encrypted German messages during World War II really ushered in the era of information warfare. But let's fast forward to the present. How are we, that is the S&T community and industry, working together to get the most advanced technologies we can muster into the hands of soldiers so they can prevail on today's battlefields? What does it take to do that today? Well, first we start with research at the basic level, like the research General McClellan did on those foreign saddles. By pitting the information and technology today against obstacles that the soldier faces on the battlefield, we can offer improved solution sets. In addition to his European tour, McClellan pored over hundreds of books to determine the best solution at the time. A modified Spanish tree saddle that proved a superior tool to cavalry units who used it. Colleges and universities similarly conduct such basic research today as our partners in science and technology, ensuring that we have a continuous body of new discoveries to support development. Nanotechnology, network science, and microelectronics, photonics are examples of area where this activity is robust. We as a community then take these discoveries and generate new products through applied research. Spencer's rifle was altogether a new approach that leveraged invention, discovery, and the application of sound engineering principles. In this same way, silicon carbide fibers became sheet stock, which became layered SAPI plates, which became lightweight body armor, armor that has saved thousands of soldiers' lives on the battlefield. The Army R&D centers, industry's advanced design concept shops, and various not-for-profit labs all participate in this process today and utilize early-stage proof of concepts to mature designs. Science, technology, and production come together in the systems design and development process. This is also where the handoff to industry occurs. Industry's tasks is often to take the advanced concepts, the applied R&D, these preliminary designs, and to generate concepts that are suitable for mass production and aftermarket support. Industry lends speed, flexibility to the production phase. Think, for example, about our nation's seconding of the automotive industry to build tanks during World War II. Chrysler broke ground on a tank plant just 1 month after receiving a contract in 1940. 16 months later, the Detroit Arsenal tank plant had produced roughly 500 tanks, and in December of 1942 alone, it built a record 900 Sherman tanks. Chrysler and the rest of the auto industry together delivered roughly $50 billion in materiel to the military during the war, because their executives knew how to build a facility and had the human as well as financial capital to get it done quickly. During the Cold War, the process I just described outpaced the Soviet system. S&T, design, development, and production timeframes of a decade or more were long, but they were still shorter than what our enemy could accomplish. Today, America's Army finds itself on new ground. Asymmetric warfare has created a situation where it's impossible to discriminate among our allies, our enemies, and the neutral civilian population. Conflicts are no longer dominated by steel and tank, but by the degree of which one has information superiority and can achieve a higher degree of situation awareness. Our acquisition system, which was developed to use Americans' industrial capacity to outbuild the Soviet Union, is not evolving on par with our enemies, who are creatively changing their modus operandi in conjunction with Moore's Law and Metcalfe's Law. They're adopting commercial technology and doing so in months or weeks, while we still take years, or in many cases decades, to successfully nurture a new capability through the process. In business parlance, our return on investment today isn't good. We're methodically searching for the perfect solution, if not the 110% solution, to reduce risk. But the result is that too many programs fail to actually field hardware. We excel at refining what we provide to the soldier, but we do so at great cost in terms of both time and money. Consider this. Out of roughly 70 ACAT-1 Army programs from 1978 to 2008, a 30-year span, just 40 of them fielded products to our warfighter. Our challenge today isn't merely our speed in adopting technology. The threats we face today are different and more complicated. In today's network-centric society, the loss of a single server can wreak havoc with our infrastructure, and our enemies know that. Consider the denial of service attacks Russia made on Georgia's internet infrastructure weeks before a single tank crossed the Georgian border. For nominal costs, critical information technology was taken out of service. The acquisition process that brought us the M1A1 Abrams tank is not the same one that will work in the network-centric age. Information and situation awareness are key elements on today's battlefield. I'd therefore like to propose 4 concepts around which we can morph our acquisition process to meet and defeat the challenges our soldiers face in information-focused warfare. The first is velocity. By that, I don't mean the speed at which boots on the ground can maneuver, but rather the speed at which they gain information. The next war may be decided not by how quickly we can mass fires, but how quickly we can achieve situation awareness to accurately locate the fires that we do launch. Radio reached an audience of 50 million users over the course of 38 years. Television accomplished the same goal in 13 years, and the Internet only took 4. More recently, Skype hit 50 million users in 2 years, and MySpace in just 1. With such acceleration in information flow, we need a process that can develop and deploy capabilities as fast as the commercial industry can, an increase in the speed of acquisition. The second concept around which we should base our acquisition process is proximity to the end user. By connecting the end user directly to the developer, we get a better solution on the first attempt. In my previous example, Colonel Weidler bought the Spencer rifle directly because it was best suited for his brigade's needs. We're seeing the success of such an approach through our work on future combat systems. Industry engineers are working closely with soldiers in our System of Systems Integration Lab and at Fort Bliss, where the Army Evaluation Task Force, AETF, is testing FCS in the field. Some of these soldiers recommended a simple solution for a controller device for the small robotic unmanned ground vehicle, the SUGV. why not use a device patterned after the Xbox gaming controller with which most young adults are already familiar? A gaming controller would reduce training time from days to hours because the end user is already proficient with the interface. Today's soldiers come net ready. They're often light years ahead of some of us in their comfort with war at the speed of the internet, and we need to take advantage of their skill and knowledge. Let's let the soldiers tell us what they need. Third, we must employ modeling and simulation to a greater degree to reduce acquisition cycles. A virtual environment can be effective both for design, development, and testing during the prototype and SDD phases, while using fewer resources than traditional testing. What's more, we can easily bring soldiers into the virtual environment, thereby keeping them involved in the early stage of development. Modeling and simulation is faster, cheaper, and if done correctly, can complement live fire exercises. We can take our fourth thought on the acquisition process from research universities and the pharmaceutical industry. Large drug companies like Novartis and Pfizer are increasingly relying on small research companies to conduct applied research and early-stage trials. Venture capitalists pick up the costs, improving ROI for the pharmaceutical companies that will ultimately take the drugs to market. Similarly, our research universities are becoming more like incubators of Silicon Valley, enabling both students and professors to take their ideas to market. Such small, focused development teams produce great innovation. Where would the SAAL-ZT be without innovative thinkers like MIT professor Rodney Brooks and his robotics students? Interestingly enough, during the 5 years of SDD on FCS, 2 early Stage 1 team partners went through successful initial public offerings, iRobot and Austin Information Systems. We need to reinvent ourselves to behave more like these agile researchers and support these early stage organizations. See, together we've accomplished remarkable things for the warfighter. We've done so by continually evolving. But the Army is faced with the decision today of retrograding, repairing, and resetting the deployed force, or retiring the equipment and replacing it with modern 21st century systems. To bring it back to General McClellan, his saddle showed how the right research, field trials, and developmental work come together to meet soldiers' needs. We're all here today because the scientists before us made advances that gave an affordable edge in performance, an edge that made the difference between winning and losing. However, if we want to continue to revolutionize our military and its capabilities, we must also revolutionize the system for outfitting them. We need not just disruptive technologies, but also disruptive ways of designing, developing, and deploying them. I'm hopeful that we will continue to improve our procurement system by embracing acquisition strategies that are responsive to the needs of the Army. Thank you very much.